Is the Church of England helping violent, sex-crazed asylum seekers stay in Britain? Next.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. Two teenagers who killed Brianna Ghey in what's been described as a sadistic attack have been given life sentences for her murder. 16-year-old Scarlett Jenkinson, who for the first time admitted stabbing the transgender teen, will serve a minimum term of 22 years. Her accomplice, Eddie Ratcliffe, was given a minimum of 20 years. The court heard after coaxing Brianna to a park, they stabbed her 28 times in a frenzied and ferocious attack with a hunting knife. In victim statements, Brianna's family described her killers as two predators stalking their prey and said they are pure evil. A manhunt continues tonight for a suspected chemical attacker, with police saying they found significant and important new evidence. A new image has been released of Abdul Azidi, who was last seen at London's King's Cross Underground station on Wednesday evening. Police say the 31-year-old mother who was attacked is still sedated in hospital with life-changing injuries. Met Police Commander John Saville also gave an update on the children involved in the attack.
Thankfully, we've had an update from the hospital that the two young children that were with her, their injuries aren't as serious as first thought, and they are not likely to be life-changing. In terms of our manhunt for Azedi, we've got a large team of very experienced detectives leading the manhunt. Thankfully, due to the great response we've had from the public, we're able to follow him and know that he got on a train at 9 p.m, a Victoria Line tube heading south.
In other news, there are fresh warnings of potential human rights breaches on the Booby Stockholm barge as asylum seekers face what's being described as a claustrophobic condition. The Home Affairs Select Committee says cramped living conditions are contributing to a decline in mental health for some residents. The cost of housing asylum claimants on the barge is £120 per person per night. It comes as the Home Office has asked for an emergency £2.6 billion after spending more than expected on asylum accommodation. Last year, the government spent around £8 million a day for migrant accommodation, with official figures showing more than 50,000 were housed in hotel rooms. And the star of Rocky movies, Carl Weathers, has died aged 76. The US actor, who played Apollo Creed in the first 4 Rocky films, died peacefully in his sleep, according to a statement released by his family. He began his career as an NFL linebacker, but went on to become an action and comedy star, featuring in classics such as Predator, opposite Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Happy Gilmore with Adam Sandler. His family paid tribute to him, saying he was an exceptional human being who lived an extraordinary life. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on the screen, or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Patrick.
I start tonight's show by inviting you to play a game of Broken Borders Bingo. Abdul Azidi is the asylum seeker on the run, OK? So let's play. Did he come in the back of a lorry? Tick, yes. Did he fail his asylum application but was able to stay? Tick, yes. Is he a sex offender? Tick, yeah, there we go. Did he convert to Christianity to claim he'd face persecution? Oh, yes, he did. Is he violent? Yep, there he is. Can we still now not deport him? Tick, oh, there we go. He's still got the full house, hasn't he, people? He's done it. Abdul Azidi has done it. This is a watershed moment, OK? A catalogue of people and institutions must now be held to account and real change enforced. Firstly, the role of the Church of England and Archbishop Justin Welby. Is the C of E complicit in helping asylum seekers fake claims by pretending to convert to Christianity? The Liverpool maternity hospital bomber was Syrian. He pretended to be a Christian to claim that he'd be persecuted if we returned him. Now, Abdul Azidi also pretended to convert to Christianity, according to reports, after 2 failed asylum bids, but was reportedly still a practising Muslim. The Archbishop says that the Rwanda plan is against the judgment of God. He thinks that people who arrive here illegally are our responsibility. Does that not imply that men of the cloth now have carte blanche to do everything they can to keep these people in the country? We need to know how many asylum seekers claim to have converted to Christianity, what checks are done on them to make sure it's true, what repercussions are there for people in the church when this goes wrong. This is a vital point. Azidi created his asylum claim whilst living in the UK. He created the reason he was granted asylum by using the Church of England, certainly as one of the main reasons. Next, the role of tribunals and judges. The Home Office actually did its job here. They rejected him twice, they didn't want him, and then some judges decided that he could stay. Next, it's the role of our politicians. We've got Labour Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper with the Refugees Welcome sign. I mean, there's no deterrent there, is there? And here's Caroline Notes, Conservative MP, on the BBC last night.
Stark reality is that every day women will face misogyny and microaggressions. If you're a woman of colour, it will be worse. And we have to do better at understanding the cultures that make men think that's OK. It's not OK, and actually you can see a pattern of behaviours that lead to really horrific crime.
So she's talking about microaggressions and racial bias there. I think that's pathetic. An asylum seeker that her government allowed in, allegedly, doused a woman and some children with acid, and that's her response. But we see this all the time. David Amos's death was used to clamp down on social media. Mike Freer's resignation results in a call for MPs to speak more nicely to each other. They're both due to Islamism, OK, in some cases, all right? Our politicians are too weak. Next, the role of useful idiots looking to deflect. Former Chief Prosecutor Nazir Afzal says the problem is violence against women, not asylum seekers. Well, look, violence against women is obviously awful, OK? But the problem here really is about a violent sex offender being able to commit atrocities on our streets, possibly because they've come from cultures that might have racist, homophobic and misogynistic views. People on the left are now coming face to face with the fact that this country has actually imported a heck of a lot of anti-Semitic, homophobic, woman-hating, transphobic, backward people. And they wanted them here. Next, the role of the police. Why did it take the police so long to reveal the identity and photograph of Abdul Azidi? He got on public transport numerous times, apparently. If an urgent alert went out, I think there is a very good chance this man would now be in custody. Did not wanting to stoke racial tensions get in the way there, I wonder? I have a message for all of those different people and organisations and institutions and the web of human rights lawyers and activists behind them. They've led us to this situation. Do you not think you might have blood on your hands? But let's get the thoughts now of tonight's panel. We have former BBC chief political correspondent John Sargent. I do have GBNews star Alex Armstrong and Apprentice finalist social commentator Joanna Jargi. Thank you very much for joining us. Alex, I'll start with you. When it comes to situations like this, do you think that certain institutions now have blood on their hands?
Yeah, I mean, look, all the way from the police, the Home Office, the Church of England, there's a lot of people here and a lot of people in these institutions that need to be held accountable. We need to understand how the situation where the attacker was able to get away for so long, having his asylum denied twice, I think it was twice before he was allowed in.
Yeah. Twice.
And then being able to run on the streets and come all the way down from up north to come and commit this crime on innocent civilians in London. I mean, this is bonkers that we're allowing this.
Joanna, people allowed this to happen. People wanted these kind of people in the country, and now they're coming face to face with the reality of it, no?
Well, I think that that's actually quite unfair to say that people wanted these types of people based on one case. Let's be real. When it comes
to just one case.
Well, when it comes to acid attacks, for example, this has been going on in this country, and the rates of this are rising. So,
yeah.
You know, we see
and
that.
And unless, a lot of them?
Yeah, but unless you can actually give me stats to say that the majority of the people who are, you know, doing the acid attacks have come from the back of a lorry or from a dinghy, then I might actually, you know, take some people seriously when it comes to it.
What about certain cultures, though? I mean, it's a bit of a cultural thing, isn't it?
Why is it a cultural thing?
Well, it is. When you do look at some of the very, very recent cases that have had acid attacks on the rise, it does tend to be from cultures where it's a shame and honour thing against women a lot of the time.
No, I think that where that has come from and that whole narrative is that we tend to see acid attacks come from certain types of countries in terms of their culture over there. That doesn't mean that, you know, the people who have actually come to this country as asylum seekers tend to be the people who are giving acid attacks. And I'll give you an example, actually. There was a really big story that was publicised. Fern McCann, who was on Towie, her boyfriend did an acid attack, and that was due to drug-related gangs. People do it for carjackings. So I think it's completely disingenuous to say that acid attacks are due to asylum seekers.
It's not just asylum seekers. I am talking about legal immigration there as well, to be fair. But, John, you know, we've just played Broken Borders Britain bingo there, really, with this chap. I mean, surely this has to be a watershed moment, really, now. Something has to be done about this. We can't have these people just constantly in this merry-go-round of gaming.
No, I agree. Lots of things got to be tightened up, and you're quite right to talk about the role of priests in this. The idea that, you know, that kind of young person is suddenly going to convert to Christianity seems implausible. I mean, it's all very well. It's time people open their eyes to the fact that it is another way of escaping the asylum procedure, because they can, in fact, be helped if a priest says to them, no, they're really good, you know, conscientious Christians. But I wouldn't believe that now, and I don't think most people in that position should believe that. They should be very careful about that. I think it's extremely important, though, to get to grips with why acid attacks are different from, say, attacks using knives. And one of the reasons is that with knives, you can show off and you can have these zombie knives and you can be sort of rather a gang leader, that you've got all this equipment. You can't do the same with just a bottle of what looks like water, but in fact is acid. So concentrate on the fact that these attacks have increased with acid. Why? How can you make sure that's reduced? And how can you make sure, certainly in this case, the police not bothering to issue the photograph? Right through lunchtime, I was watching the news, thinking, come on now, just produce the picture. And they didn't until, wait for it, the news was over.
Yeah, great point that about the police there, I think.
Yeah, I think the Metropolitan Police have a lot to answer for in this, and they seem to be very hesitant. We saw that similar with the protests as well, not willing to share certain pictures of people. And I think we all know the reason why is because they were scared of being called racist or scared of racially profiling people. We just need to get on top of these things really quickly when there's someone on the loose.
I think we can't really jump to, you know, assumptions that it's because they're scared of being called racist, because the Metropolitan Police, especially when it comes to cases with women and violence against women, don't really have a great track record. So sometimes it fits the narrative to say, oh, they were just scared. Maybe they're just incompetent and they've got a history.
Well, that's absolutely true.
Really bad. So let's not.
Yeah, there's certainly a strong argument for incompetence.
I agree with Joanna that our old friend incompetence comes up so often, doesn't it? Yeah. You have all these wonderful, clever arguments as to why they might have done this, but just sheer, oh, no, we're waiting, and we wait for this, and we haven't got that organised.
I do suspect once the attacks happen and they've spoken to the victim, they'll go, describe the victim to me. That can be information that's escalated very quickly to those that need to know it and distribute the pictures. The fact that it took so long is crazy. And there's got to be something there that's wrong. Why is there a hesitation? What is the hesitation about?
John, I am, in a morbid way, quite looking forward to the day that the left really meets the consequences of its own ideology. And as a woman, I'd be quite keen to get your views on whether or not you have concerns that we might be importing people from countries, legally or illegally, who really do treat women as second-class citizens.
I mean, I'm concerned when it comes to women being treated as second-class citizens, of course, but what I'm worried about as well equally is taking a group of people, lumping them all under one brush and pretending that... Because that's essentially racist, isn't it? That's essentially, you know, treating people as if, OK, I have an idea of what I think your culture is like. And every single culture has bad bits of it, OK? And every single, you know, pockets of society have different types of, you know, crimes and things like that. So I don't think that we should kind of take one pocket, one person, for example, who's done this and paint the entire community under one brush.
Well, look, we don't have a lot of the recent data on acid attacks. There's some complicated reasons as to why, but up until 2017, 38% of the suspects of acid attacks were African Caribbean, should I say. 38% of the 32% were European white. So look, there's certainly something to say there about, like, what are the percentage of black communities, particularly where the attacks are happening in London, and what's the percentage of attackers? We can easily then say, well, that's a high percentage for that community, which makes up such a small...
What about the 30% that you just said are white European?
But the point is that there's a much smaller population of black people in the UK as there are white people, so you can start to see, yes, maybe there is a cultural issue there if the percentage is way higher.
Concentrate on the use of acid. It seems to me if you use acid, it's much more likely that it's premeditated in terms of what you then do with it. So it isn't someone getting into a wild rage and saying, get out my my knife or get out my gun. This is someone saying, I'm going to get you and I'm going to spray stuff on you which will ruin your life. That's premeditated. I mean, it's more likely to be domestic.
Yeah, I spoke to a survivor of an acid attack last night at 10 p.m. on this show, actually, and it was a case of mistaken identity. Someone had driven 300 miles, knocked on his front door, he opened his front door, and he got a pint of sulphuric acid in the face, right? And he said that apparently, the law is at the moment, if you get caught with acid in a water bottle around London at the moment, presumably it's will be across the UK as well, once, that's all right. You have to get caught with it twice before you actually get...
It also has to be in a public place.
Yeah.
So if you've got it at home, oh, well, just for ordinary what? Ordinary use? Why do you have this highly corrosive substance at home? It shouldn't matter whether it's public or private. Go after it. Photograph the people buying this stuff. Yeah. Tighten the whole rules up. Make sure the whole system is very odd for someone saying, I want an acid, which will disfigure someone.
Yeah, I just want to tease ahead to something and get your reaction on it. I've done an interview with Robert Jenrick, the former immigration minister. I'm going to play that out for you at 10 o'clock. One of the key questions that I ask him is whether or not we will actually... Let's say we catch this particular individual, Abdul Adizi, and, you know, obviously, if he is then proven to be responsible for the allegations that are against him at the moment, and we know that he's had a history of a sexual offence and that he had 2 failed asylum bids, etc., would we actually be able to deport him then? And, well, you'll find out what Robert Jenrick says about that. But, you know, do you think that if there's a chance that we can't, surely that makes it an absolute mockery of this situation?
Unequivocally, anyone that comes to this country, whether they are illegal immigrants or refugees or asylum seekers, and they break the law, there should be a zero-tolerance policy. You are automatically deported. You cannot take the goodwill of people in the country that you go to seek asylum and refuge and then break the customs and laws. It absolutely needs to be fixed.
Very quick.
No, well, that's great, the zero tolerance. What if the country refused to accept this person to go back to that country? I mean, you know, think practically. You know, it's all very well to say, do away with this, we shouldn't have this, we shouldn't have that. How are you actually going to carry this out through the courts, and in what sort of way, and how will you force people onto these planes?
Well, the courts is certainly a problem too.
I'll just ask quickly, do you think that this individual should be deported then?
I think potentially. I think that we should look into it, you know, but I think that, you know, all cases are different and we don't actually know enough about this individual yet. And he is actually technically still a suspect.
He is still a suspect. What we do know about him, though, is that he did fail his asylum application twice and then potentially lied about one of the reasons to keep him in the country and is guilty of a sexual offence. So there is that side of it. But, yes, all right, look, loads more from my panel coming up. Now, earlier, as I mentioned, I did sit down with former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick to get his take on multiple things. The ongoing migrant crisis that's gripping the nation. You will not want to miss that. Also, he's got a strong word of warning and some quite astonishing revelations about James Cleverly as well. But also, yesterday marked the start of LGBT History Month. So why do we need an entire month to commemorate everything but the kitchen sinks these days? Look, renowned LGBT campaigner Peter Tatchell will be live in the studio to battle this out. But first, my head-to-head, we're picking up on a theme that we mentioned a little bit at the start there. I'm going to be joined by Kelvin Mackenzie and a Church of England vicar to delve into the institution's role, if it had one at all, in Abdul Azidi being granted asylum in the UK. Is there a massive problem with our Church of England and illegal migration? This is Patrick Christys tonight, only on GB News. Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christys tonight, and it is now time for our head-to-head. The Church of England has found itself under a white-hot spotlight in recent days after the London chemical attack suspect Abdul Azidi was revealed to have been a third-time lucky asylum seeker after a priest, or vicar, vouched for his claims of a conversion to Christianity. He was twice denied asylum before being allowed to stay, and it's also been revealed that he has a criminal record of sex offences. This isn't the first time a dangerous criminal claimed asylum on the basis of conversion to Christianity. Ahmad al-Swalamin blew himself up outside a Liverpool maternity unit on Remembrance Sunday in 2021. Why does the Church of England hierarchy seem to care so much about letting everyone and their dog into the country, but clearly don't have much concern for the safety of its residents? I also do have a little clip now, because I think this might come from the top, right? Of Archbishop Justin Welby talking about things like the Rwanda plan. So let's just play that.
Compassionate policy is one that recognises we have a share of global responsibility. It's not a solution, it's a mistake, and it will be a failure. When migrants arrive here, our system is grossly wasteful in both human and financial terms. Control has become cruelty. In the system for years, unable to build a life or to contribute to our society.
I'm joined now by the former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie, and Church of England vicar and internet personality, Reverend Dan Beasley. Thank you very much. Kelvin, I'll start with you. Should we investigate the Church of England, do you think, when it comes to their potential role in our asylum seeker scandal?
Yes, I think in this case it's quite simple. I think the priest should come forward and explain to the public, who are now alarmed about their own families, etc., how he believed this particular person. What was it that was said to him that made him say, oh yes, you are no longer a Muslim, you are clearly committed to being a Christian? And further than that, how would this vicar or priest view the fact that friends of this Yazidi now say he was a good Muslim, and only a day before the attack had actually gone and bought half a sheep because it was a halal sheep? The truth about the matter is that he either pulled the wool over the priest's eyes, or the priest decided, I don't care whether you are Muslim or Christian, I'm going to allow you to stay. In this country, this is known as pray to stay among those in the migrant community.
Reverend, would you welcome an investigation, do you think, into the church's potential role into our ongoing asylum seeker scandal?
We have to understand what's happening. You've got to remember, as parish priests, we're here on the ground. You know, there's immigration is happening, people are coming in, but we have local churches. We are called by God to serve in our local churches. We are called by God to help people who are coming towards us. And, you know, we're not trained in all this in one sense. There are people to help us. And so it's kind of difficult to understand the circumstances of what's happening in this situation with that local parish priest. You will get people coming in and trying it on, as they say. You know, and the priests, we've got good hearts. We're there to help people. People are coming in need. And so what's happening in this situation, yes, it needs to be understood, because there's a lot of people will be looking at the Church of England and saying, what's going on? And we are there, like I said, to help people, especially people coming in need as they're approaching us in our parishes.
I just wonder, yeah, not necessarily talking about yourself there, Reverend, but I do wonder whether there is a bit of naivety at times. And Kelvin, when you hear those statements from the Archbishop Justin Welby there, what I hear there is that, you know, if you have someone who is an asylum seeker who presents themselves at one of your churches and you think that there is even the slightest possibility they might be deported or sent to Rwanda, that probably you should do everything you can to try and keep them in the country. And I wonder if that's what's happening.
Well, let's face the reality of it, that under asylum rules, which the Home Office operates on, if you claim that you have a religion which says you will be persecuted back in your homeland, you basically have to stay. So I am not sure that this would just be a parish priest that decided whether this bloke Yazidi was in fact okay to come into our country. I suspect it might be a little bit higher up the line, but we need to know this. We've now seen a disaster happen in our nation, and it is time that we investigated the way this is done. Of course, with Welby going around saying, I don't care how many there are, you're all God's people, come on down. Well, actually, this is one of the effects of it. He's not God's people, and he's not even Allah's people. He is a nasty, he is a suspect of a very serious violent occasion. And we don't know that there may not be more going forward. It's a shocker.
Yeah, this is the thing. I mean, Reverend, if there are more cases like this, you know, we have had the Liverpool bomber, we've got this guy, obviously he's a suspect at the moment, the police are currently looking for him. If more and more of these things emerge, all of a sudden the spotlight really, really does shine, even more than it already is now, on the role that the Church of England is playing in this. And I just wonder, you know, is there not an irony here about the Church of England dwindling parish numbers, OK, sitting on billions of pounds worth of resources, but certain parishes are saying that they're skint, to the point where some people who work in the parishes even consider taking strike action? I mean, the last time I went to an Anglican church was a few months ago, and the talk there, the collection was for the local migrant hotel. There were people sitting in the back who were clearly from the Middle East. And I just wonder whether the church has got its priorities right here.
Churches have got their priorities right. The Church of England is a broad church. You can come to my church and see what my church is like there, Patrick. You know, all churches are called to do different things. You know, different parish priests will live their calling out in different ways. As if the question about if there's more people out there, you know, people will come and play the system in that sense. But there are many, many, many genuine people who are seeking asylum, and the churches are there to help people in those need. Like I said, at the local parish level, we're not asking those questions, and they're not going to tell us those I'm seeking asylum, please say that I'm a
But
Christian.
you were vouching for them, though, and I know this is not you personally, right? I really don't want to, end up dragging you into that side of it. But people from the church are vouching for these people. So, I mean, there has to be an element of responsibility, does there not, from the likes of Justin Welby, Reverend?
If there are parish priests actually vouching and saying this in these circumstances, absolutely, there needs to be an investigation into that, because that's not what we do as Christians, and that isn't right. So if that's happening and it's been proven to happen, then absolutely an investigation needs to be had into those people.
Kelvin, I'm going to give you the final say on this now, and I want to know, what questions do you want to put to Justin Welby, to the church as a whole? What are the things that you think we, as the great British public, need answers on right now?
Well, the question I'd like to put to Yazidi, I would like to ask him, have you ever read the Bible? Have you ever prayed? At what point did you see Christianity as the way forward and not Islam, right? I'd like to know those questions, because somebody must have asked those questions prior to him being given the go-ahead. After all, the vicar or priest who didn't ask these questions will have known that he was already a convicted sex attacker. This happened after his second asylum was turned down. So he would have known that Newcastle Crown Court, he was convicted. So there were lots of questions that priest should have asked. Did he ask them, or did he just say, I tell you what, I don't really care, come on down, nothing will happen?
OK, all right. Look, both of you, thank you very, very much. I really, really do appreciate you both coming on, especially at this time on a Friday night. That is the former editor of The Sun there, Kelvin Mackenzie, and the Church of England vicar and internet personality, Reverend Dan Beasley. I've got a statement now from the Church of England. I'm not sure you're going to like this. It says, this is clearly a shocking and distressing incident, and our thoughts and prayers are with all of those affected by it. It is the role of the Home Office and not the Church to vet asylum seekers and judge the merits of their individual cases. Well, the comeback to that is, if the Church is vouching for people and those people are using the Church as part of their court cases to stay in the country, then is it not the role of the Church as well? But look, coming up, the two teenagers who murdered 16-year-old Brianna Ghey have been publicly named by a judge. They are Scarlett Jenkinson and Eddie Ratcliffe, and their faces have now been plastered across the nation. But is it right to name and shame kids who commit crimes, no matter what the severity is? Bother at the BBC as well, because a Beeb staffer has caused quite a stir after making highly opinionated posts online, leading to furious accusations of aggressive anti-Semitism. You will not believe... I mean, it's borderline Holocaust denial, this stuff, OK? Is it now time for the BBC to act? I've got a very special guest for you, all right? Because it's actually one of GB News' own people. They left the BBC over its refusal to call Hamas terrorists, and they shine a very, very interesting light on what is going on at our state broadcaster. But shortly, earlier I sat down with the former Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, and I got his take on numerous different things: the ongoing migrant crisis, James Cleverly and what he could do when it comes to Turkey, remarkably, being declared an unsafe country for us to deport a load of Turkish economic migrants. And also, he answers some very serious questions about this asylum seeker alleged acid attacker, all right? Most notably, can we actually deport this guy even if we wanted to? You will not want to miss that. But next, yesterday marked the start of LGBT History Month. Why do we need an entire month to commemorate everything but kitchen sinks these days? Renowned LGBT campaigner Peter Tatchell joins me live in the studio, and we're going to battle it out.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christys Tonight, only on GB News. Now, February marks the celebration of LGBT History Month, which kicked off yesterday. But do we really need a whole month for this? So Mother's Day, Father's Day, Valentine's Day, Holocaust Memorial Day, even Remembrance, that just gets a weekend. So why do issues affecting a much smaller group of people get a whole month? By the time that we've had LGBT History Month, Pride Month and Black History Month, we're a quarter way through the year, aren't we? So is all of this really necessary? Joining me now in the studio is human rights campaigner and activist, it's Peter Tatchell. Peter, thank you very much. Why on earth do we need an LGBT History Month?
Well, LGBT History Month is not compulsory. It's entirely voluntary. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. But the reason why there's a month is because there's such a huge welter of activities, films, talks, plays, you name it, and it's happening all over the country. If you tried to go to all of them, it would be absolutely impossible, even within spread out over a month. So that's the idea why the month came about.
OK, all right. I mean, do we really need it, though, seriously? I mean, what's the Black History Month? I mean, I'm not sure why we necessarily need that all the time. You've already got Pride Month, so why the additional month for the history?
Well, Pride is part of Pride Month.
Right, OK.
So it's not an additional. But, you know, it's entirely voluntary and people really enjoy it. I mean, people come from to London from all over the country and all over the world for the LGBT plus.
Would you back a
It's actually a boost to our economy.
What about a White History Month? Or White Working Class History Month?
Well, if white working class people want to celebrate their month, I'd be wholly supporting it.
Do you think people would be shouting from the rooftops saying this is a ridiculously bigoted thing to do, to have a white working class history month? They've already got everything their own way, all the privilege that white working class van drivers and schoolboys appear to be bathing in at the moment.
Well, that is a point, but, you know, working class history in general is very much underrated in this country. And I think that transcends, it's not just about white working class, it's about black and other ethnic minority working class as well, and women working class. And that's one of the great things about Sylvia Pankhurst, the suffragist, or suffragette. She championed not just women's right to vote, but also the rights of working class women who often not only got poorer jobs, lower pay, longer hours, and no childcare support. So I think there are lots of issues here, and I think any community has a right to celebrate who they are.
I think some people will be concerned that, certainly when it comes to probably more Pride Month, etc., that it's the kind of thing that our schools get involved with as well, because they think, oh, it's a nice thing for the kids and all of this. And then it does wonder, it crosses that line potentially for some people with, well, hang on a minute, are we forcing this stuff down kids' throats? Well, we do it with Black History Month, or we're doing it with Pride Month, or with LGBT History Month. I mean, does it go too far? Do we devote too much time to what are, by definition, minority groups?
Well, just take a look at Pride in London, the main parade. There's probably at least 500,000 people spectating, and looking at the demographics and the statistics, it's more than half the people there are straight families with kids. For them, it's a great day out, it's colourful, it's music, it's lively. People enjoy it. And it's not sexual, it's just about celebrating the LGBT plus community. And when it comes to schools, again, no one's talking about sexuality. They're talking about respecting other people and the fact that there are some kids who grow up in a family with mum and dad, some with just a single parent, and some with same-sex parents. It's just part of the fabric of life.
I wonder if it's a fine line between saying or recognising the genuine struggle for rights that the LGBT community has had, and then also creating a fake notion of ongoing persecution in today's society.
Well, sadly, we have to look at the facts. You know, a third of all LGBT plus people in this country have been victims of homophobic hate crime. In more than 15%, there's been actual physical violence. Now, it's much less than it was, but that's still a reality. And many people are living with those traumas even today. And of course, we just heard about the tragic case of Brianna Ghey. Jay, she is indicative or symptomatic, an extreme example of the kinds of persecution that trans people can face. Not all trans people, suffer bad things, but a lot do. Much higher rates of prejudice, discrimination, hate crime, and of course, higher rates of mental health because of that. So, we have made progress, and I want to thank everybody, gay and straight, who's listening, for helping us get there. It's fantastic. But there are still issues to fight for and win.
Do you think there is a risk, though, of pigeonholing people and creating more division in society as opposed to an umbrella of unity by really shining a light on people's differences and by shining a light on some of the divisions in society as well, the points of difference between us? I think this certainly applies, in my view, anyway, when it comes to race. But, when it comes to sexuality as well, does that do more to divide us than bring us together?
Well, I think, all these different celebrations, Black History Month, LGBT plus History Month, and I'd like to see a working class History Month. Yeah. But,
you could have Mother's Month, Veterans Month, for example, all of this stuff.
They're not about hating or being opposed to other people. It's just about celebrating a particular community and culture. And I think, when I'm not black, but I think, Black History Month is great. It's fantastic to learn about how long black people have been in this country and the contribution they've made.
I think the concern with that, again, though, is that then it feeds into things like critical race theory, right? It never just seems to stop at, oh, look, Martin Luther King or whatever. It then feeds very quickly into this idea of ongoing persecution against black people and that white people are to blame for that, etc.
Yeah, well, it shouldn't. It shouldn't. That's not the way to look at it. But, I've been really impressed to, learn about, I can't remember the names, of this black boxer at the turn of the 20th century. He was a champion. He was completely forgotten. The first black footballer, completely forgotten. The first black officer in the British Armed Forces to lead men into battle, completely forgotten. But their names and their contribution is being resurrected through Black History Month and organisations like it.
Does the gay community or trans community, etc., really need any more highlighting? I mean, everywhere you move now, there's a rainbow flag on something, At the train stations, especially around London as well, there's all the flags, etc., on bollards and all of this. Road crossings, they're slapping it on the side of hospitals, etc. Does it actually really seriously need highlighting any more than it already is?
Well, we know from history that when I was growing up, there was no affirmation or validation of being LGBT. And that's why among our community there were very high rates of depression, suicide, and things like that. Nowadays, because there is this validation, the rates of mental health and anxiety, depression, suicide has gone way, way down. So I think it's really important that that visibility is there to encourage better mental health among young people coming to terms with their sexuality and gender identity.
Peter, thank you very, very much. There's Peter Tatchell there, who is, of course, human rights campaigner and activist. Look, coming up, earlier I sat down with former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick. He speaks to me about a wide range of things, from our inability to deport people that we know are criminals, etc. Also, what on earth is going on when it comes to this idea that Turkey is now an unsafe nation. He's got quite a stark warning, actually, for our current Home Secretary, James Cleverly. And the two teenagers who murdered 16-year-old Brianna Ghey have now been publicly named by a judge. So that's Scarlett Jenkinson and Eddie Ratcliffe. Their faces are plastered across the nation. They're on your screen right now if you're watching us on television. But is it right to name and shame kids who kill, no matter the severity? Bother at the Beeb, a BBC staffer has caused a stir after making highly opinionated posts online. I say highly opinionated, I mean, really, in some cases, it's borderline Holocaust denial, actually. Is this time for the BBC to act now? I will speak to a former member of staff at the BBC who quit their job over just this kind of stuff, and he shines a light on the true culture at the Beeb. You will not want to miss that. I'll see you in a tick.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together. For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christys tonight. Just a reminder that we're going to be hearing very shortly from former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick with some quite astonishing revelations, actually. But now, the BBC has found itself in hot water again after one of its employees called Jewish people Nazis and white people parasites in a string of social media posts. So Dawn Quaver has received a lot of backlash for her online attacks. Doesn't seem to be bothered at all, by the way, as she posted a Facebook post today saying, "Come at me by all means, my shoulders are broad." Well, despite calls for her to be fired, the BBC haven't. I'm hoping that we're going to bring up a couple of those images for you, as well as some of the things that she's actually been posting, but they include things like alluding to the idea that the Holocaust was a hoax and that it might have been people like the Rothschilds, etc., in charge of it. There we go. So, you know, there's a lot of stuff in there. I'll read just some of it out for you now, which is 26 million Russians died in World War I, but all we hear about made never to forget are the Jewish 6 million. Never mind the Rothschilds, she says, all of this, the Holocaust. I mean, it's remarkable, isn't it, that this stuff is out there, working at the BBC. I mean, there's a fair bit more of this stuff, by the way. Joining me now is GB News producer Noah Abrahams, former, I should say, who recently left the BBC over his refusal to call Hamas terrorists. Noah, look, thank you very much. Could you just explain to me a little bit about some of the things at the BBC when it comes to this kind of culture, which appears to allow this kind of ideology and idea, anti-Semitism, really, is what it is, isn't it, to run riot?
It's absolutely anti-Semitism. And here we are again, Patrick, talking about the BBC and anti-Semitism. So, yeah, I stopped working for the BBC because of their refusal to label Hamas as a terrorist organisation, because the most influential broadcaster on the planet, who I was representing, could not and still won't say that a group who were responsible for the biggest loss of Jewish life since the Holocaust are terrorists. So I stopped working for them because I have a moral compass, because I won't endorse or represent an organisation who won't state fact. And if our national broadcaster can't state fact, then they simply cannot be trusted. That's the kind of culture at the BBC. And why would I, as a Jewish person, work for an organisation who are harming our community?
I just find it remarkable, though, because they do have a duty to report actual facts, don't they? And when it comes to things like Hamas, I mean, that was a terrorist atrocity, and they are a terrorist organisation. And, you know, what was it like for you when you came to look to leave the BBC and some of the conversations there?
Well, when I came to leave the BBC, I did it. I had an internal conversation before I left. I warned them of what I was going to do if they didn't change their stance. To be honest, I thought they would change their stance. It's such a basic ask. It's such a basic necessity. And I was astonished that they didn't. You know, this is Hamas we're talking about. They killed over 1,000 Jewish people. If that were to happen anywhere else in the world, they would be labelled straight away, as a terrorist organisation. But the BBC chose not to go down that path. And with this issue, I recognise that mistakes in workplace employment can occur, but this is catastrophic, and it follows catastrophic broadcasting, Patrick.
Do you think this individual now clearly feels so emboldened that they've put something out there saying, "Come at me, my shoulders are broad," and we've got stuff out there from her about the Holocaust, as she calls it, the Holocaust? I mean, that implies to me that there is a certain culture at the BBC that you think you get away with that.
It's pathetic. It's pathetic to think you can get away with that. This story comes less than a week after Holocaust Memorial Day. Let's remember that. 2 days ago, I was sat in Parliament listening to the testimonies of those who were actually there on the 7th of October. That's why this angers me so much. And it troubles me even more, because I don't believe for a second that the BBC didn't know about this particular employee and her hate crimes. And their hate crimes, this isn't just an employee going rogue. This is an employee breaking the law. This is also an employee that in 2007 posted on her Facebook that the BBC was ran by Zionists, and the BBC still employed her. It's mind-blowing how incompetent that organisation are.
All right, well, look, Noah, thank you very, very much for coming on. It's great to chat to you, and it's great to have you around the office as well. GB News' Noah Abraham, so thank you very, very much. Well, look, coming up, the two teenagers who murdered 16-year-old Brianna Ghey have been publicly named by a judge. So it's Scarlett Jenkinson and Eddie Ratcliffe. Their faces are right there on your screen if you're watching us on your TV or online. But is it actually right to name and shame kids who commit these kind of crimes, no matter what the severity is? At 10:30 p.m, we will bring you the very first of tomorrow's pages, hot off the press. But next, I sat down with former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick, and he absolutely blows the lid off our broken borders. Stay tuned.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
I'm Alex Deakin, and this is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Good evening. Tomorrow will stay pretty mild across the south, a blustery day again across parts of the north with a mixture of sunshine and showers. We've got high pressure to the south, low pressure to the north, and in between this weather front is just edging southwards. The isobars squeezing together. It's been very gusty over northeast England, southeast Scotland, staying that way into this evening, but slowly overnight the winds will ease at least a little bit. Staying breezy though, particularly in the far north with more showers in here. Some patchy rain for Wales and northern England, but many areas staying dry. And look at the temperatures, 9 or 10 degrees in most towns and cities, certainly through England and Wales. So a pretty mild start to the weekend for early February. On to the details for tomorrow, and cloudy with some rain into Wales, particularly on the west coast. Some of that rain will trickle into northern England, the Midlands and maybe East Anglia later. To the south, most places just dry and cloudy. And further north, a bright day for much of Northern Ireland, southern and eastern Scotland, but blustery again with showers across the Highlands and the Western Isles. A cooler feel here, but again, for most places, pretty mild. On Sunday, we'll see a bit more rain tracking back across Northern Ireland, perhaps into parts of western Scotland and across northern England. Again, much of the south, bar a bit of drizzle over the hills, just dry and fairly drab. Getting quite windy in places once more on Sunday, and again, it's going to be mild, double digits across the board with teens in the south.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys Tonight.
Their home country, we're told, is Afghanistan, and so that will be difficult.
Can we actually deport the alleged acid attack asylum seeker? Plus,
Islamism of this kind is a cancer. It's got to be rooted out and destroyed.
Ex-Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick is on shortly with a warning as well to our new Home Secretary, and
Scarlett Jenkinson, For the murder of Brianna Ghey, I set the minimum term at 22 years, less the 352 days that you have spent on remand.
Children named, shamed and caged. Should we be naming kids who kill? I've got tomorrow's newspapers tonight for you as well with my panel. It's GB News star Alex Armstrong, ex-BBC political chief John Sargent and Apprentice finalist Joanna Jarju. Also, what on earth is happening here? Yeah, get ready, Britain. Here we go. Astonishing revelations from the ex-immigration minister next.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. Some breaking news in the last half hour. The US has begun a wave of retaliatory strikes targeting militants in Iraq and Syria. That's according to officials. A statement from US Central Command said forces struck more than 85 targets. It comes after a deadly attack in Jordan that killed 3 US troops and injured 40 others. 2 teenagers who killed Brianna Ghey in what's been described as a sadistic attack have been jailed for her murder. 16-year-old Scarlett Jenkinson, who for the first time admitted stabbing the transgender teen, will serve a minimum term of 22 years. Her accomplice, Eddie Ratcliffe, was given a minimum of 20 years. The court heard after coaxing Brianna to a park, they stabbed her 28 times in a frenzied and ferocious attack with a hunting knife. In victim statements, Brianna's family described her killers as 2 predators stalking their prey and said they are pure evil. And a manhunt continues tonight for a suspected chemical attacker, with police saying they found significant and important new evidence. A new image has been released of Abdul Azidi, who was last seen at London's King's Cross Underground station on Wednesday evening. He got on a Victoria Line tube at 9 p.m. heading south. Police say the 31-year-old mother who was attacked is still sedated in hospital with life-changing injuries. Met Police Commander John Saville also gave an update on the injuries of her daughters, aged 3 and 8, saying they are now not likely to be life-changing injuries. There are fresh warnings of potential human rights breaches on the Bibi Stockholm barge as asylum seekers face what's being described as claustrophobic conditions. The Home Affairs Select Committee says cramped living conditions are contributing to a decline in mental health for some residents. The cost of housing asylum claimants on the barge is £120 per person per night. It comes as the Home Office has asked for an emergency £2.6 billion after spending more than expected on asylum accommodation. Last year, the government spent around £8 million a day for migrant accommodation, with official figures showing more than 50,000 were housed in hotel rooms. And TV presenter Johnny Irwin has died at the age of 50 after being diagnosed with terminal cancer in 2020. Mr. Irwin was best known for presenting Channel 4's A Place in the Sun and the BBC's Escape to the Country. The presenter had been open about his illness since his diagnosis in the hope of inspiring others to make the most of every day. TV presenter Jasmine Harmon has paid tribute to her Place in the Sun co-star and partner in crime Johnny Irwin following his death. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Patrick.
An asylum seeker, sex offender and alleged acid attacker is on the run. He failed the asylum process twice and manufactured his asylum claim in Britain by pretending to be Christian. A serving minister has stood down because of threats from Islamists. Turkey, a leading holiday destination and a NATO ally, might now be classed as a safe country, so we couldn't deport Turkish economic migrants there. Everything seems broken, but I want answers, and I want you to get answers. So I spoke to former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick, who voted against the Rwanda bill because he didn't think it was strong enough. And I started by asking him, if we do catch Abdul Azidi, a convicted sex offender who allegedly doused a woman and children in acid, and then if he's found guilty, of course, could we actually deport him?
Well, good evening, Patrick. I think this terrible case just highlights how important it is to have a fully functioning, robust Rwanda policy, so that if somebody arrives, they're actually detained, not allowed to abscond and live in our country for months or years, and are swiftly removed to a safe third country like Rwanda. The problem with the present situation, and indeed the weak version of Rwanda the government's pursuing, is that people are able to make these spurious claims and drag out their removal for many years. Of course, I hope that this individual, if they are responsible for this terrible crime, is convicted, serves time in jail, and then is removed. But their home country, we're told, is Afghanistan, and so that will be difficult, as you say, although there are some countries that are removing people back to Afghanistan, or at least exploring it. And I think many people would take the view that somebody who had committed such a serious crime as this individual is now alleged to have done deserved to be sent back home, wherever that is.
So to be clear, we would have a problem sending him or others like him to Afghanistan?
If he's found guilty of this very serious crime, then, as I say, he will spend time in prison and off our streets, and then there will be a process to try to remove him. At the present time, we wouldn't send somebody to Afghanistan, but that might change in the years ahead when perhaps he served a prolonged sentence in prison for what he appears to have done or is alleged to have done. But I think the lesson of this incident is that we mustn't allow people like him just to break into our country and then to be able to live here for years whilst pursuing endless claims. This is the definition of a merry-go-round of spurious claims and counterclaims. This is exactly what Suella Braverman and I set out to stop. This is what the Rwanda policy is supposed to do. Unfortunately, the government has chosen the weaker version of that policy, where individuals can make claims. As you know, I strongly, vehemently disagreed with that and encouraged them to change tack. They haven't done that yet. I hope perhaps that one day they will, because we have to stop this. We can't allow individuals to be frustrating our system with grotesque and absurd claims, such as somebody has converted to Christianity, which probably isn't correct, and by doing so prevent their removal. We've got to get to a simple system where people come here illegally, are detained and swiftly removed. That's what I've always advocated.
Yeah, a lot of people will agree with that, but I mean, it is absolutely astonishing, isn't it, that as it currently stands, this individual, if indeed he goes on to be proven guilty, etc., probably won't be deported back to Afghanistan, because apparently under our current laws we can't. So we have a merry-go-round of legal challenges being shamelessly gamed by treacherous activists and human rights lawyers. Does Mr Jenrick think the current version, then, of Rishi Sunak's Rwanda bill would do anything to change that?
And let me explain why. Because what we know here from the facts that are available is that Home Office officials, in fairness to them, rejected his claim twice, but that a tribunal judge ultimately was sympathetic to him, despite the fact that he had been convicted of a sexual offence, a serious one, and then granted him asylum or a form of humanitarian protection to remain in the UK. And the form of the Rwanda policy that the government is pursuing enables people to make individual claims and places a lot of store on the same types of people, these tribunal judges, and hopes that they won't be so naive in the future. But I'm afraid the evidence suggests that they are sympathetic towards the asylum seekers, and they often do make errors of judgment, as this may well be. And what I want to see is that whole process cut out. And so if somebody goes into the country, comes here illegally, then they get detained and removed, and this merry-go-round is ended once and for all.
So if we have this situation, again, like the exact situation that we've got now, and the Rwanda bill, as it currently stands, is passed in its current form, clearly there is every chance that that will do nothing to stop that. OK? So today, it emerged that we might not be able to deport anyone to Turkey, where millions of people go on holiday every single year, and it's a NATO ally, by the way, because Home Office officials have decided that it's not a safe country.
billions of Brits go on holiday to Turkey. We do business there. It's an ally. It's a partner. It's a member of the Council of Europe, a NATO member state. It is a safe country, but we're told today that the Home Office have decided not to deem it as such in law. That's very disappointing if that's correct. I initiated negotiations with the Turkish government in the summer of last year and had very productive conversations about how we can get illegal migrants from Turkey back home and how we can work together to tackle organised immigration crime, much of which stems from Turkey because the boats and the engines themselves that are used in the channel are either manufactured there or passed through Turkey into Europe. So it's a crucial part of the chain behind this whole issue. What seems to have happened is that the Home Office have said that whilst it might be generally safe, there are sufficient instances of persecution or human rights abuse in Turkey for us not to be able to deem the entire country to be safe. That means that the process will be far more bureaucratic, it will be much easier to appeal, and this, as you said earlier, merry-go-round of claims will be able to continue. That's very worrying because we're seeing a great increase in the number of essentially economic migrants from Turkey getting into small boats and coming to the UK in search of a better life. That's got to stop. We've got to be able to detain and remove those people as quickly as possible. I don't know the full detail behind what's happened here, but I would strongly urge the Home Secretary to change back. When officials presented me and Suella Braverman with similarly cautious advice with respect to India, we overruled them and declared India to be safe. And that enables us now to remove people back to India swiftly. I think James Cleverly has to do the same for Turkey.
That's actually a really big line there, OK? So it appears that our Home Secretary could stop this madness if he wanted to and declare Turkey safe. Is that definitely in his remit, though? That's what I wanted to know.
Absolutely, and as I say, Suella and I did that for India and Georgia and other countries, and so I hope the Home Secretary will take the same robust decision with respect to Turkey, or else I'm afraid we'll find thousands of Turks, as I say, who are mostly economic migrants, coming here on small boats and have no prospect of removing them. And the public will then be left having to pick up the cost of looking after them to the tune of tens or hundreds of millions of pounds for years to come, and that's completely unacceptable.
So, according to the former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick, James Cleverly, our Home Secretary, could step in and overrule this idea that Turkey is an unsafe, in part, country and just run straight over that. Will he? A serving minister quit over Islamist threats as well. Rishi Sunak decided not to even bother speaking about that, nor did Sir Keir Starmer. So I wanted to ask Mr Jenrick if we should be calling this kind of Islamist intimidation out for exactly what it is.
I think we should. It's obviously desperately sad for Mike Freer, who is a superb Member of Parliament, has been a fantastic representative for Finchley and Golders Green and for the British Jewish community, as it's one of the constituencies with the largest number of British Jews in the country, and I will miss him enormously from Parliament. But there have been those who have reacted to this with, to my mind, trite comments like MPs need to be nicer to each other, or discourse on social media needs to improve. Those things may be true, but that's not the nub of the issue here. The issue is that someone like Mike Freer and others across the country are victims of virulent anti-British Islamist extremism. We have to call that out, properly diagnose it, and take action against it. Islamism of this kind is a cancer. It's got to be rooted out and destroyed, and you don't even begin to do that until you have an honest conversation about the fact that it exists in our society and that it's threatening people all of the time. It's pervasive and growing, and we've got to tackle it.
Yeah, very strong stuff there from Mr Jenrick. Look, the Tories are some 20-odd points behind in the polls at the moment. There is no question that these issues have arisen on their watch, but Labour could be in power soon. Where are they on the issues of illegal immigration and Islamism?
Well, I don't think they're anywhere on these issues. That's the sad truth. I think, as you say, one of the most important questions facing the country is how can we control our borders? How can we protect the security of the public? How can we ensure that the pace of change in our country through legal migration isn't too fast? And how do we guard against the most dangerous consequences of mass migration, such as rising extremism and damage to our British way of life? And I hear nothing from the Labour Party on those issues. I would be extremely worried to live under a Labour government for precisely those reasons. The Labour Party would scrap our Rwanda policy, even if it was working and stopping the boats. That's what Yvette Cooper and Keir Starmer have said. And they have said nothing but platitudes and warm words on the issue of extremism. I want to hear them calling out anti-British Islamist extremism and setting out how they would take action to stop it. If they're a serious party of government, that's exactly what they would do.
So, as it stands, we will struggle to deport a two-time failed asylum seeker who lied about his religion, committed a sex crime and then allegedly doused a woman and children with acid. Surely, everybody can see that that's madness and it needs changing. When it comes to Turkey as a safe country, our Home Secretary can apparently decide that for himself. So will he? Why didn't he overrule Home Office officials? The big question to answer there for James Cleverly. Islamism is a cancer in our society that needs to be eradicated, but it looks as though the party that let it fester are about to be voted out, and a party that doesn't seem to care about it are going to be voted in. Spare a thought for Britain, won't you? But let's get the thoughts of my panel now, OK? And I am joined tonight, and very gratefully so, by former BBC chief political correspondent John Sargent. We do have social commentator and Apprentice finalist Joanna Jarju, and GB News star Alex Armstrong. Alex, lots to unpack there when it comes to what Robert Jenrick had to say there. I mean, this idea of Turkey not being a safe country, I think, but the Home Secretary potentially, or definitely according to him, having it within his powers to actually decide that for himself. I mean, that's remarkable. That hasn't happened yet.
You know, I think the public are going to be saying, you've had a decade in power, and now we're talking about it right on the precipice of an election. What is going on with the Tories? And as much as I agree with everything Jenrick has said, and he said some very sensible things, and whilst he was a minister, he did some good things, this is too little too late. How can the public trust the Tories on immigration going into this election? And how can they sit there and blame the Labour Party and say they're scared about the Labour Party? They've overseen the highest migration figures on record. I mean, so it's all a little bit too late, in my opinion. In terms of James Cleverly, yes, he has the power to do it. I wonder why he's not doing it. Where is he? Where is the Foreign Secretary? This is bonkers.
Look, I think that's... I'll come to you next, John, after John, but I think that's the big question for me out of all of that, which is that if it is the case, as Robert Jenrick is saying, that the Home Secretary could have just run straight over any kind of suggestion that Turkey is an unsafe country, as he and Suella did apparently when it comes to India. But why hasn't he done that?
Well, I'm not sure they think it would work. President Erdogan has made it quite clear what his position is. The Turks feel that they've had enormous number of refugees in Turkey, 3.5 million. So it's more in terms of their illegal immigrants than we have in Britain. It's not a simple matter.
But these are Turkish nationals we're talking.
I know, but the way that you describe this as if, it could just be done with all that James Cleverly's got to do is turn around and make it quite clear. But most of these things are much more complicated than that. It doesn't... And when you hear, I don't know, Jenrick going on and on about how it's unacceptable, we must call them out, we mustn't do this, and then you think of just one simple point. The Supreme Court has made it absolutely clear in their ruling before Christmas that you have to consider asylum complaints and jurisdiction in Britain. Now, you can't get round that as far as they were concerned. The ruling was stark. Now, there's nothing in the Rwanda bill that somehow means we've got through all this and if it goes back to the Supreme Court,
Rwanda bill,
this will be sorted. It won't be sorted.
But the thing with the Rwanda bill is he was making the point there is this, that, supposedly anyway, if somebody like this individual did come into Britain, the one who's being hunted at the moment for this alleged acid attack came into Britain, they would have been detained, so they wouldn't have been allowed straight out, and then they would have been sent for processing in Rwanda. So they would never have had the chance to actually go on.
I don't quite know if the Rwanda bill works.
Everyone's voting, but this is the thing.
I know.
Everyone's voting. Well, not everyone. Loads of people are voting against this now. The media class are all against it, and then you see an incident.
No, it's not the media class. You're saying, can it? You know, lots of people would be prepared to accept the Rwanda bill if they thought it could get through the legal complications and the international treaty obligations, and people would say, oh, well, that's pretty impressive. But at the moment, there seems to be no consistent argument from the lawyers as to how this magical bill could actually become law.
It's almost as if they look at refugees and asylum seekers as very simplistic. Basically, bombs have to be dropping on your head for you to be, you know, eligible. So, yes, we go, you know, to Turkey on holiday, and that apparently makes it a safe country. But actually, we have a history in this country of calling out other countries who maybe have really bad practices when it comes to LGBTQ. There's so many different things that people...
With respect, at the moment, you could get a Turkish Airlines flight from Turkey, land at Heathrow, and according to this, you could just say, basically, I don't want to go back. I'm essentially going to be persecuted by Erdogan. Maybe I'm an academic he doesn't like, and we'd have to let you stay.
But even looking at the case of this acid attack person, you know, this person has done this, but...
No, allegedly.
Has allegedly done this, but at the same time, he's come from Afghanistan, and I'm old enough to know and remember when Kabul fell, and we were all saying, and I'm not saying that this person, you know, specifically worked with the British Armed Forces, but to kind of have this blanket, you know, response to this, to say that anybody who's coming from Afghanistan, then we need to... Afghanistan especially is very specific.
Prioritising our own citizens here.
Yeah, well, look, I think what British people care about is that they can live in a safe country. So, I mean, when you've got migration figures in the millions now every year, in the millions, and we can't verify some of those people, we're now going to be giving them jobs in the care home sector.
No. Net migration is about 700,000. It's not a million.
With illegal migrants, we're talking about giving them jobs, right? We can't even verify who some of these people are. We don't have documentation. Now they're going to be looking after care homes. I think there's reasonable concern here from the British public.
Oh, sure, lots of concern.
We're going to have to move it on now. Look, coming up. So, this is a shift in tone. A pigeon suspected of spying, yes, has been released this week, and The Apprentice kicked off, but started off with an awkward moment for one contestant. We'll be revealing all at 10:30, just about, probably be a bit later. We'll bring you the very first of tomorrow's front pages, hot off the press. They're landing in thick and fast as we speak. But next, very serious story this. So 2 teenagers who murdered 16-year-old Brianna Ghey have now been publicly named, all right? They have Scarlett Jenkinson, they're Eddie Ratcliffe. Their faces are everywhere. But is it right that we name and shame kids who kill, no matter what the severity is? I'm going to be joined by legendary radio DJ Pete Price, who's spent the past 3 decades fighting for James Bulger's killers to be locked up and not be able to hide with fake identity. Stay tuned. Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together. For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews at gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. The two teenagers convicted of murdering 16-year-old Brianna Ghey were formally named today ahead of sentencing. Scarlett Jenkinson and Eddie Ratcliffe were sentenced to 22 and 20 years, respectively. Both killers were just 15 at the time of their crimes. Now, the revelation of the murders' names has reignited a massive public debate over whether minors who commit horrific crimes should be identified to the public. Many believe that despite their young age, the nature of the offence warrants public knowledge. But Brianna's own father, despite referring to the killers as evil monsters, actually said they shouldn't be named. So he said, they are nothing, they should just be forgotten about. So, should we name and shame child killers? Joining me now is the legendary radio DJ Pete Price, who spent the past 3 decades fighting for James Bulger's killers to be locked up as well. Pete, thank you very, very much. Where are you on this, then? Should we be naming child killers?
I think we should. I grew up with this dreadful case. I was on radio on the night that Ralph Bulger's mother, Helen Bulger, Jamie's grandmother, rang my show and said, "I don't think I'm ever going to see that angel in my house again." That was when the story broke. We then found out what had happened, and as journalists and broadcasters, we weren't allowed to say what had happened to that child. And that child was a baby. For 5 nights a week, 4 hours a night, every night for weeks and weeks, people were tortured, were demented with pain over what had happened to this child, James Bulger. People had seen these 2 children take him. They'd seen him from the bus. It started to become this ridiculously big story. And I then became the voice of Liverpool throughout the world. Not that I wanted to be, but I was chosen because I broke the story. I then got involved with Denise. I got involved with Ralph. I went to the trials when they were found. I went on the marches to keep them in prison. I've heard the stories about them coming out, Venables in particular, and telling everybody who he is. There's been whispers that he's been by Denise's home, which has petrified her, and she's lived, how this has lived through the torturous times. And because he appears to be a dreadfully bad person, I think people should know if he's going to get married, who he should marry, or who you are marrying.
Well, this is Pete. Can I just say this brings me on to my next question, which I think is something that people are probably going to be talking about in the coming days, which is that these 2 monsters I mean, the judge actually described it as sadistic, and she's not wrong when you look at the level of preparation and the manner in which they slaughtered Brianna Ghey. They are, upon release, probably going to end up with a taxpayer-funded new identity and lifelong anonymity. Probably, OK? Should they get that?
I believe they should not, in any shape or form. Venables has already apparently had a new identity, and he's gone drinking to pubs and told people who he is. So it's then cost us again for another identity. And he's had no punishment. He hasn't. I mean, people still don't know what those children, Venables and Thompson, did to that baby. It was the most, and I wouldn't even say it on here, it was the most horrendous torture on this earth. So why should they be protected? They've never, ever, yes, they've been arrested, they've been locked up, but they've been protected because people don't know who they are.
What about the argument, by the way, I mean, it turned out that one of the killers of Brianna was facing expulsion from her previous school for supposedly spiking a pupil with drugs, and then had tried to drug Brianna. The school weren't made aware, they didn't make people aware. Now the local council is getting involved, so they're launching an inquiry. I mean, how many inquiries do we need into all of these things, for goodness sake? But what about the fact that Brianna's dad has said, look, I don't think they should be named. Why? Because it gives them fame, and because it makes them, maybe, they did it for the infamy. So is there some truth to that? Well, would you have any stock with that?
I understand what he means about giving them fame. They shouldn't have any publicity like Venables and Thompson shouldn't. But I think people should be aware of who they are, because who knows, when those two come out, which is a long way away, why should they be involved with another family and the family not know who they are? There were stories, all sorts of stories going around in Liverpool that Venables was going out with a girl now and was talking about marriage. Shouldn't the parents of that girl know what a monster their daughter's going to get married? So it is a difficult one. Yeah. And by the way, they will be hit, they'll be targets, absolute targets, because somebody will take a pop at them. I don't think that should happen, but that will be in the equation as well.
Pete, thank you very, very much. It's great to have you on and to be able to discuss something like this with you, as someone who's been, kind of right on the inside of another, it's obviously not the same, but another similar-ish case as well. So DJ Pete Price there, thank you very, very much. Now, coming up, very much a shift in tone, this. A suspected pigeon who has been spying, apparently, has been released this week, and The Apprentice kicked off, but started off with an awkward moment for one contestant. Look, remarkable stuff coming your way. Don't go anywhere.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
to find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you.
every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other pay-per-review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christys tonight. We're only on GB News, and I have got tomorrow's front pages for you right now. So we start with the Daily Mail. He stabbed Brianna because he hated trans people. She just wanted to kill for fun. This is, of course, the devastating case now of Brianna Ghey and the two killers. The Daily Telegraph. Teenagers' lust for fame led to murder of Brianna. Now, that's interesting, especially in that debate about whether or not she should be named. They also say Royal Navy abandons major warship patrols around the Falkland Islands. Can I just say the Falkland Islands have come out on Twitter, because that's the way it's done these days, and called this fake news. But, hey, there we go. Daily Express. Unmasked evil monsters who killed Brianna. There we go. There's obviously a theme on the front pages here. The Mirror. Brianna killers unmasked, pure evil, they say, warped teens with thirst for killing and sadistic murder. The Eye have gone for something different. They say, cut income tax to ease cost of living crisis, voters urge Hunt. Majority of voters believe they pay too much tax, as 46% want help for lower earners. Well, probably involve you paying more tax, but anyway, there we go. The Daily Star. Old romantics work out how much your soulmate would cost. Apparently, it's £9.67 a day. The cost of falling in love is £9.67 a day. Someone might want to have a word with my fiancée about that, but there we go. Look, we will start with my wonderful panel as well. We've got John Sargent, of course, got Joanna Jarju and Alex Armstrong. We've got to address the story that's leading the front pages tomorrow. Alex, I'll start with you. Look, should these individuals have been named and shamed? You look at what's on the front of one of them here, which is, you know, she just wanted the fame, this killer. Well, we're giving it to her now, aren't we?
Yeah, you're certainly right. I mean, I don't know whether it sets a poor precedence for young offenders. I do believe in a young person's able to change their life sometimes. But in this case, these two are extremely sadistic, and I have no problem with them being named and shamed. And I don't think they should ever be released from prison, frankly, for what they've done to this poor young person. So in this case, no, but whether it sets a precedence, I'm not sure about that.
Well, you know, she wanted fame, apparently, and she's got it now, hasn't she? She's got it.
She's got it, and also she said that she would kill again. She's been given life with a minimum of 22 years, and if somebody says that, quite bluntly, we have to take it seriously. But also, he did it because he just simply hates trans people, and I think this just kind of shows we have to be really careful when we debate and have conversation about the topic about transgender.
Are they evil, John?
I think they are, yeah. I just...
Born evil, do we think?
With something like this, whenever they have clips of Brianna talking and you think, what a lovely young person, and they deliberately led her to meet them, and she had been bullied at school, and she thought, oh, well, maybe I should try and meet people more, and she gets murdered. I mean, you can't get worse than this, can you? I mean, this is if the word evil means the worst possible, they're evil.
Yeah. All right. OK. Well, look, that is leading the vast majority of the front pages for you. I just wanted to mix things up a little bit. OK, so this is a very different story. So, a pigeon suspected of spying for China has been cleared of espionage and released back into the wild after being held by Indian police. Pigeons historically have been used to carry messages. However, this particular pigeon is innocent. The bird was captured in May last year and a 3-month investigation took place. I mean, it is remarkable. I think we do have a video. Here we go. So this is the pigeon after spending months in this pigeon prison, being released by Indian authorities. I mean, John, look, you've been covering politics for a very long time. You've been at the sharp end, right, of this news industry.
Sure.
I mean, does that pigeon look like a spy to you?
No, I mean, I would have thought the pigeon was innocent. The only thing that slightly worries me is have they let the pigeon fly? Because what the pigeons really want to do is to get back home.
To China. Exactly.
Their views about China may differ from your views about China. But to say to a pigeon, you're not going home, that's pretty evil.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, I mean, Joanna, justice for Pidgey. Free the pigeon one, I suppose.
Yeah, free the bird.
Free the bird.
Free the bird.
Free the bird. Fantastic.
There you go. But, I mean, to be fair, it is funny, but also people are terrified of things that China could do. We had that balloon that was flying over the US before and things like that, but I think we've got much bigger, I was going to say fish to fry, and that obviously wouldn't fit with this. I think I only had one shot. But, yeah, there's bigger things that China could be doing than sending a pigeon.
So much time has been wasted in India, presumably, having a look at this pigeon, capturing a pigeon, wondering, conducting some kind of trial, right? And then whilst they decide keeping the pigeon in captivity and then releasing it, you would have thought, just kill it or don't capture it.
Yeah. I thought it was something other wacky racist when I first saw it, you know. I'd love to see the mugshot, by the way. I'm really waiting for that moment. Yeah, it's bonkers, isn't it? I mean, it just reminded me of those conspiracy theorists who think that pigeons are spies for the government, and they've got robots.
But it also shows how these totalitarian regimes are always on the edge of absurdity, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Because they don't there's no sort of feedback from the public to say, look, I think this is a bit absurd. So they tend to pursue it because they're so serious and feel at any moment they may lose their position if they don't say the right thing. So the conformity at the top level produces often these absolute, totally absurd things.
Can we just bring... Is it possible to just bring up that footage again of this pigeon actually being released? Because I honestly just could not believe it when I saw it before. I mean, you know, it's in India, right? This is it. You know, the pigeon... There's someone there, seriously, you know, in a kind of like military police clobber, has to walk out carrying a pigeon, which, as you were saying, John, probably hasn't, you know, can't even fly anymore by the looks of things. This thing's like, why the heck have you just captured me and kept me in this? It's just unbelievable. But there we are. I thought that story might be a little bit of light relief for people along the way there. Look, I think we've just about got time to actually talk about something that also is on the front pages today and again, and it is a kind of murderous, horrific story. It is about income tax. It's on the front of the Eye. Cut income tax to ease cost of living crisis, voters urge Hunt. Alex, you were very exercised about this story.
Yeah,
Why?
I mean, this is the highest tax burden in generations on people, and on top of that, we've got all the hidden costs, like the cost of living crisis, food inflation. It's about time the public are given some of their money back, in my opinion. And I think if the Tories have any chance of winning the next election, they're going to have to do some major tax cuts. It might be the only way I ever vote for them, frankly. But yeah, I mean, I really do think they need to do something here.
Majority of voters believe they pay too much tax. I think especially...
They always do.
There's a particular point
in
the year...
They always think this. I mean, they wouldn't have said, oh, you know, I'd love to pay more tax. People never say...
Well, yeah, they do, though, John. I get it all the time. I'd love to pay more tax to put towards the NHS. I hear it all the time.
No, it's all to do with how the question is raised. If you say to someone, do you want to pay more tax? Answer, no. You then say, do you want better public services? Yes, I do.
Yeah. Well, this is it, isn't it? Yeah, and that's exactly what this is as well. But 46% want help for lower earners. I mean, OK, I understand.
That sounds goody two-shoes.
Well, but then
who are you trying to help? Oh, I'd love to help people who, you know, have a harder time than I do.
Exactly.
Whenever I hear tax cuts and Tories in the same sentence, all I think is, who are you actually going to give the tax cuts to? Because I don't care whether there's a conversation until they're actually going to give it to average people.
Yeah, but Joanna, they do, on the vast majority, give the tax cut to the lowest earners, and that's
Liz Truss.
I mean, look, I'm not saying they've made good economic policies, but they do tend to look after the poorest first in most cases.
Liz Truss?
Well, I think that was a result of economic policies, but she didn't actually get anything done, did she? So.
Well, no. Well, anyway,
inheritance tax.
More. Yeah. All right. Well, look, more of tomorrow's papers for you tonight. Now, my splendid panel are going to nominate their greatest Britain Union jackass as well. This is Patrick Christys Tonight. We're only on GB News. Don't move.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests, and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
More front pages for you now. OK, so shall we whiz through them? Because we have got the Times, yes. Outcry over asylum for suspects in alkali attack. Look, we've spoken about this a heck of a lot on the show. We've had the former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick on. Home Office was unable to reject the third attempt for this guy to be booted out of the country. I mean, it is astonishing, isn't it, really? And as we heard from Robert Jenrick, even if this guy is caught and if he's found guilty, it's very unlikely we're going to be able to deport him anyway, which I think makes a mockery. Yeah, US hits back in Syria and Iraq after troop deaths. So there's the ongoing issues in the Middle East there. We've got The Guardian as well, which is our final front page of the day. Exceptionally brutal, teens jailed for murder. This is, again, the Brianna Ghey story there. Yes, so I am joined again by my wonderful panel, John Sargent, Joanna Jarju and Alex Armstrong. I do feel as though we've covered most of the stories on the front pages here, so I would quite like to talk about the new season of The Apprentice, mainly because we've got a former Apprentice finalist here with us as well. So, it kicked off this week, but one of the contestants had a little bit of an awkward start. Take a look.
Refund of 52%. What are you doing? Are you clapping?
We've still got £300 profit.
No, that's the overall. Why don't you just let Tim finish?
My soul would have left my body there. Joanna, you were on The Apprentice.
Yes.
What was it like? Did anything like that ever happen to you or people around you? How do you feel for him?
I did have one gaffe, and it was one task when I was actually project manager and we were looking for items that were to do with Lord Sugar. And I said, is Lord Sugar even Jewish?
No.
And everybody just kind of crucified
silent.
me. But I think that's probably the worst thing. But I think being in the boardroom where it's very serious, you know, it's crunch time, and it's the last time you want to be kind of embarrassing yourself when you literally could be fired 5 minutes later. And Lord Sugar's probably the type of person who would make a joke then about the thing that you just did and then tell you, see you later, you're off.
Can I ask you, like, how old were you when you went on it, do you mind me asking?
23, I just turned 23.
Wow. I mean, that is amazing. It must have been intimidating. I don't know, did you relish it? Were you intimidated by it? What was it like?
I always say it's the best and worst thing I've ever done in my life. It was traumatic in some instances, so people see it and they kind of say, oh, these people are so stupid, but you are sleep deprived so badly, and you're away for like 2.5 months, no phone, no nothing, barely any contact with anybody. Once a week you get to speak to your family for about 10 minutes. anybody would go insane. Yeah, so to think that you're going to kind of turn up and be your best corporate self is just an absolute fallacy.
It always looks so easy.
It's also the best. Yeah, it looks easy to when you're like sat on the couch being like,
why have they done that? Everyone can see that.
Exactly. But you don't have internet, you don't have any of that. So I always say I'd like to see everyone else try. Yeah,
good point.
But it is one of the best things I've ever done in my life.
Would you ever consider giving it a go?
I'd love to go on it, but that's because I watch it from home. But I watch it from home and I think, God, look at these idiots. I mean, I could do a better job on that. But then obviously you get this inside information. The one thing I would struggle with that I do think about now is that they have to try and navigate with a map. I think I'd be rubbish at that.
I was project manager for that map. You made me be project manager. I was like, I'm northern. I've barely been to London before. Obviously now I'm already in London. I still can't navigate London. If it wasn't for Uber, I wouldn't get anywhere.
It's been a tremendous BBC success, to be fair, John, this The Apprentice, hasn't it? I mean, it was revolutionary when it...
No, it is amazing. I mean, it's also, there was always complaints that the BBC didn't care enough about people who were entrepreneurs and in business. And that was true. I mean, there was no... when I started in the BBC, they wouldn't even report the FTSE news. I mean, they wouldn't say what's happened in the stock market today. You know, normally at the end of a bulletin or right in the end, they'll at least give a nod towards the city. But they never used to do that.
Can I just very quickly ask you, right, when he fires you, do you just never see him again? Is it like, right, you're fired, and then you go out, you walk past that receptionist, you pretend to take a phone call, and you're in a cab and you're off? Is that it?
Yeah, you're off.
Right.
The only time you see him is if you get invited back for the final to kind of help the people who are in the final, but that's it.
Like a returning hero who should have won in the first place. Right, OK, so it's time now to reveal today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. John, who's your Greatest Britain, please?
Well, the Greatest Britain is the Scottish Secretary Alistair Jack. But to understand why have I chosen him, I've also got to admit straight away who my Union Jackass is. Well, I've got to, otherwise you can't understand why have I chosen Alistair Jack.
OK.
I've got to.
Go on, do it then, John.
So it's Nicola Sturgeon, because she denied that she had any thoughts about promoting Scottish independence during the pandemic.
Right.
And Alistair Jack was not at all impressed by that. He completely denied her promise that she gave about that, and also talked about her crying at the inquiry.
Yeah, he said...
And said if she had one eye, right, if she could cry with one eye, she would.
Yes.
And I thought that was such a neat... And the first time I've ever heard that, maybe it's a northern phrase, I don't know.
I don't know. Well,
but it's a very neat phrase and very, of course, in very bad taste.
All right. Joanna, go on. Who's your Greatest Britain, please?
Well, mine is Meghan and Harry's Archewell Foundation. They're doing great work, and that's for calling for social media platforms to adopt better content moderation policies and other fixes, saying that these modifications need to be made to addictive apps that can harm young people's mental health. Really important. Great job, Meghan and Harry.
All right. I don't think you're going to win.
We love them.
Who's your Greatest Britain?
Mine's a really random one tonight. Honorary Greatest Britain, Puck's attorney Phil the Groundhog. He's predicting an early spring for us, which I cannot wait for. I'm sick of it.
Just for a bit of context, I think we might have got a little clip of whatever the heck this is.
Puck's attorney Phil! Glad tidings on this Groundhog Day. An early spring is on the way.
America. OK, so we've got... the Greatest Britain. I'm going to go for the Groundhog. Why not? You know, you don't see that very often, do you? Right, well done, Groundhog. Right, OK, so look, we've done your Union Jackass. Let's rattle through quickly. Who's your Union Jackass, please, John?
My Union Jackass is Michael Gove, who was lobbied by a firm that became the single biggest recipient of PPC contracts through the VIP lane, and it ended up being £680 million.
All right, OK.
Mine's the British justice system, funnily enough. Judge John Laws, ironically named, has let Greta Thunberg off the hook for another protest. Serial offender, isn't she, with public offence laws?
Yes, OK. I am going to go for Nicola Sturgeon, actually, just to resurrect John's choice from before. The Greta Thunberg one ran it close, I must say, as did Michael Gove. Good choices. Can I just say a massive thank you to this wonderful panel tonight? Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you to everybody who's been watching and listening at home or wherever you are. I will, of course, be back again on Monday evening at 9 p.m. for another rip-roaring week. I hope you have a lovely weekend, but make sure you keep it GB News, because up next, it's Headliners, and they're going to be whizzing you through the news in the way that only they know how. Until then, Keep fighting the good fight.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
I'm Alex Deakin, and this is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Good evening. Tomorrow will stay pretty mild across the south, a blustery day again across parts of the north with a mixture of sunshine and showers. We've got high pressure to the south, low pressure to the north, and in between this weather front is just edging southwards. The isobars squeezing together. It's been very gusty over northeast England, southeast Scotland, staying that way into this evening, but slowly overnight the winds will ease at least a little bit. Staying breezy though, particularly in the far north with more showers in here. Some patchy rain for Wales and northern England, but many areas staying dry. And look at the temperatures, 9 or 10 degrees in most towns and cities, certainly through England and Wales. So a pretty mild start to the weekend for early February. On to the details for tomorrow, and cloudy with some rain into Wales, particularly on the west coast. Some of that rain will trickle into northern England, the Midlands and maybe East Anglia later. To the south, most places just dry and cloudy. And further north, a bright day for much of Northern Ireland, southern and eastern Scotland, but blustery again with showers across the Highlands and the Western Isles. A cooler feel here, but again, for most places, pretty mild. On Sunday, we'll see a bit more rain tracking back across Northern Ireland, perhaps into parts of western Scotland and across northern England. Again, much of the south, bar a bit of drizzle over the hills, just dry and fairly drab. Getting quite windy in places once more on Sunday, and again, it's going to be mild, double digits across the board with teens in the south.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
(2024), a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show. Every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. Some breaking news in the past hour. The US has begun a wave of retaliatory strikes targeting militants in Iraq and Syria. That's according to officials. A statement from US Central Command said forces struck more than 85 targets. It comes after a deadly attack in Jordan that killed 3 US troops and injured 40 others. President Joe Biden said in a statement the US response will continue at times and places of our choosing. But he added the United States does not seek conflict in the Middle East or anywhere else in the world. 2 teenagers who killed Brianna Ghey in what's being described as a sadistic attack have been jailed for her murder. 16-year-old Scarlett Jenkinson, who for the first time admitted stabbing the transgender teen, will serve a minimum term of 22 years. Her accomplice, Eddie Ratcliffe, was given a minimum of 20 years. The court heard after coaxing Brianna to a park, they stabbed her 28 times in a frenzied and ferocious attack with a hunting knife. In victim statements, Brianna's family described her killers as 2 predators stalking their prey and said they are pure evil. And a manhunt continues tonight for a suspected chemical attacker, with police saying they found significant and important new evidence. A new image has been released of Abdul Azidi, who was last seen at London's King's Cross Underground station on Wednesday evening. He got on a Victoria Line tube at 9 p.m. heading south. Police say the 31-year-old mother who was attacked is still sedated in hospital with life-changing injuries. Met Police Commander John Saville also gave an update on the injuries of her daughters, aged 3 and 8, saying they are now not likely to be life-changing. There are fresh warnings of potential human rights breaches on the BB Stockholm barge as asylum seekers face what's being described as claustrophobic conditions. The Home Affairs Select Committee says cramped living conditions are contributing to a decline in mental health for some residents. The cost of housing asylum claimants on the barge is £120 per person per night. It comes as the Home Office has asked for an emergency £2.6 billion after spending more than expected on asylum accommodation. Sir Elton John, former Prime Minister Sir Tony Blair and TV presenter Fiona Phillips were among the guests who attended the funeral of Derek Draper. Good Morning Britain presenter Kate Garraway arrived earlier today for her husband's service at the church in North London, where they married nearly 2 decades ago. Mr Draper, who battled a long-lasting COVID-19 symptoms, died in January